This is Doug DeNiro, and today I'm going to talk about 5 cool used luxury SUVs that are actually cheap to own. This list was unbelievably hard to make. Luxury SUVs and cheap to own do not go well together. And in making this list, I planned it to be a top 8. I could only come up with 5. So 5 cool used luxury SUVs that are actually cheap to own. Let's do it.
Before we get started, are you ready for your next cool car? Sell your enthusiast car on Cars and Bids. Trading in your car to dealers means you aren't getting market value for your car, leaving you with less cash for your next fun car. Just look at our recent sales of these cool cars compared to current trade-in value. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is the trade-in offer, and this is the Cars and Bids result. Get started now on carsandbids.com. Sell on Cars and Bids and join the best community to sell your enthusiast car.
Okay, here we go. 5 cool used luxury SUVs that are cheap to own. The reason that this list is so hard is because most used luxury SUVs have a reputation for being expensive to own. Land Rover, for example. Expensive, nice. When they're working, they're lovely, wonderful cars. They are expensive to own. They break a lot and parts are expensive. BMW X5, Volvo, they all have this aura around them that they're very nice when they're new and when they're leased and when they're under warranty. But they're also very large and full, top to bottom, front to back, of stuff that will break. Not only electronics, but complicated four-wheel drive and air suspension and traction control and adaptive hill descent control systems. All of this stuff sort of combined, rolled up into one complicated luxury vehicle that has its own ventilated seats and climate control screen and all this stuff. Luxury SUVs are sort of the final boss of unreliability because they just combine so much into one. And so it is very difficult to find luxury SUVs that are cool and luxurious and cheap to own for that reason. But I found 5. And there are only 5. And no matter what anybody tells you, there are no others. I looked. I spent a lot of time looking. No matter what a salesperson says or your buddy says, these are the only 5. So anyway, it is hard to combine cool, used electricity, affordable, but it is possible. So I'm going to go through these 5. They're in alphabetical order. These vehicles do not compete. I couldn't really rank them, but these are the 5. Number 1. Alphabetically, the Cadillac Escalade. Cadillac Escalade has historically avoided a lot of the traps that its rivals have had because it is just a simpler vehicle. And I actually think this is a drawback to the Escalade when it's a new car. The Escalade is based on a pickup truck chassis. It is body on frame. The ride is, as a result, unsettled. And some of the interior equipment and feel of the car are harmed by the fact that it starts life as a ladder frame pickup truck chassis. The seating position, the steering feel, the handling, the ride quality, the maneuverability, none of that equals a Mercedes-Benz GLS. And the Escalade, since its inception, since the GLS's inception in 2007, the Escalade has never been able to equal those cars. Where it benefits, though, is ultimately it's a pickup that starts life on a ladder frame. It uses pickup truck powertrains. It uses pickup truck, a lot of times, suspension and a lot of stuff underneath. It's pretty easy to work on. Now, there are newer Escalade models for which this may be changing. The latest Escalade has an 80 zillion inch screen going across the entire dashboard, and there's now an electric Escalade, and it has a lot of weird stuff like power doors and all sorts of tech. I'm not sure that one will stay reliable. But generally speaking, over the years, the Escalade has managed to be 3 things. A luxury SUV with good luxury features, not as refined or as high quality as a GLS or an X7, which are purpose-built luxury SUVs, but it's nice enough. And it has also managed to be cool. There is no denying that a Cadillac Escalade is cool. And it has also managed to be pretty reliable. And it is not uncommon to see Escalades, although they start to get rough with age, put on 200 or 250,000 miles. They are relatively reliable vehicles, and they do not fall into some of the over-technically complicated traps that their rivals do. And honestly, it's not on this list, but more or less the same goes for the Lincoln Navigator, which has always been based on, also truck chassis. I have anecdotally heard less reliable things about Navigators over the years, but I think generally speaking, parts prices are not as high as the German rivals. They can do longer distances than the German rivals. They can tow more. They are more robust. The drawback is, again, maneuverability, driving experience, etc. will never be on the level of an X7, but the trade-off is robustness. Now, this doesn't matter as much when the car is new, and as a result, a lot of people choose the GLS and the X7 and kind of look down on the Yukon Denali's and the Navigators because they drive worse. Oh, those are for Ubers. But as these cars find their way onto the used market, where driving experience starts to matter less and reliability starts to matter more, you start to see some of the benefit of the body-on-frame full-size American luxury SUVs, which can deliver a much more longevity-based experience than their European counterparts. Okay, next vehicle on this list, again alphabetically, used, cool, luxury SUV that's cheap to own, the Lexus GX. And I gotta tell you, to me, when I was making this list, this is the first car that I put on this list, and I think that that is the final boss of combining all of these things in one. It is used. That's pretty easy. It is luxury. Absolutely. It is a very nice interior, a Lexus GX. It, again, is not going to be quite as luxurious or as comfortable as some of the purpose-built European rivals, like a Mercedes-Benz GLE, like a Mercedes M-Class, like an X5. It's not going to have that car-like feel, but it is still nice. It is still luxurious, upscale, quiet, a good place to spend time. It is definitely cheap to own, and I think that's where the GX really stands out the best. It has robust powertrains. It is, once again, a body-on-frame truck-based vehicle, which lends itself more to a robust design and more reliability. It is just going to be a more capable, more reliable vehicle than its rivals, even if they might drive a little bit better. And also, frankly, it's cool. The Lexus GX is cool. As these things have aged, people have realized that they are both reliable and off-road capable, and so they're modifying them. And so used GXs are actually kind of the darling of like the young overlander world. They're reliable, they can go anywhere. It kind of checks all the boxes. And if you want a used luxury SUV that's reliable, cheap to own, cool, like nothing quite checks the boxes like the Lexus GX. Other vehicles on this list do pretty well, but they're never going to quite get to the level of all of the things at once of the Lexus GX. Like, for example, the Escalade, it definitely doesn't drive as well, doesn't quite feel as maybe luxury as a Lexus GX. Other cars on this list have their own demerits. Most of them are not as reliable. They are still pretty reliable. They are pretty cheap to own, but nothing will quite equal the GX, especially with the 4.7-liter Toyota 1UZ V8. But even the later ones with the 4.6 are still excellent, reliable, robust vehicles that check all the boxes. Okay, next on this list, the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon. Believe it or not, even though Mercedes-Benz has a reputation for kind of reliability issues, the G-Wagon is a pretty damn robust car, especially the early W463 models. So the ones that were sold in the US from 02 to maybe about 2012, those are probably the ones to get. Those old V8s are inefficient and not particularly powerful, but they are dead reliable. And the G doesn't have a lot of ancillary things that go wrong either. You hear about door lock actuators, you hear about window switches. They're not big deals. And it is not uncommon to see G-Wagons pile on serious miles. They are robust cars that are built for real robust use. They are overbuilt in a way that other Mercedes-Benz products simply are not. The newer G-Wagon that came out in 1819 hasn't really been on the market long enough to make the determination as to whether it's like that. But generally speaking, G-Wagons are actually pretty robust, reliable cars, especially if you hit them in that sort of mid-2000s era. Parts prices are expensive, but every problem you could have has been diagnosed a million times on the internet and on forums. You just Google it. Because G-Wagons in general have a lot of people on the internet talking about fixing them, but also the motors that are in them have been used in a billion different cars over the years. and so every problem is figure outable, every part is available, but they are generally pretty robust and pretty reliable vehicles. And you see them pop up with 150, 170, 200,000 miles sometimes, and they still go for big money, which is a testament to how the market views them. Very capable, but also very capable of being used even at that mileage range. You see a Range Rover with those miles, it is basically worthless. But a Toyota Land Cruiser or a Lexus GX or a G-Wagon with those miles, the market people generally feel those cars still have life left in them, and they're right. Okay, next one. This will be a bit of a surprise, but used cool luxury SUVs, cheap to own. The second generation Porsche Cayenne. So that's 2011 to 2018. Now, I want to specifically call out the lower in the model range you go, the more reliable it's going to be. A base model V6 2011 to 15 Cayenne is actually a pretty damn reliable car. Things start to get less reliable as you pack on higher trims for two reasons. Number one, the V8s, and specifically the turbo V8s, they're a little bit less reliable as cars. They are more expensive to maintain. But also because those cars tended to also pack on more features like air suspension or active this or that, and that stuff can break. The base early second gen Cayennes have proven to be shockingly robust and reliable cars. We constantly get them submitted to us on Cars and Bids with crazy miles on them, 100, 150, 180,000 miles. It's only a 13-year-old car, and it's a Porsche. And it's especially surprising because Porsche's primary use case before these cars was making sports cars that were third car, never daily drivers. It was never vehicles people would use. And so the fact that they made such a robust and reliable car out of the gate is pretty surprising. Obviously, this isn't the first gen Cayenne, although that's a pretty robust vehicle too, but the second gen Cayenne ends up being the one that is the most reliable. These are also pretty good deals. You can buy V6 early second gen Cayennes for not much more than 10 grand. I wouldn't necessarily focus on that car. I would try to find a relatively low mile, relatively non-abused car so that you can be the one to abuse it. And also keep in mind that parts prices are not going to be cheap. You are still driving a Porsche. There is probably crossover with Volkswagen Touareg and Audi Q7 models, but they're not exactly known for being cheap either. You're going to pay up in parts prices. Nonetheless, this car has turned out to be pretty reliable over the years, and you might be surprised with regular and routine, reasonable maintenance how not unreliable a second gen Cayenne might be. I really am especially surprised by this. They're smooth cars, they're good cars, and they've stayed pretty robust. And finally, the last car on my list, cool used luxury SUVs that are cheap to own. This one's obvious, Toyota Land Cruiser. And specifically, I actually want to talk about the 100 series Toyota Land Cruiser. I think basically any Land Cruiser is going to be a pretty robust car. However, when you're thinking about luxury and cheap to own and cool, there's sort of a happy medium with the 100 series, which was the Land Cruiser that was sold from 98 to 2007, and it was twins with the Lexus LX 470. All this applies to the LX 470 as well. The newer Land Cruisers, the 200 series and now the new one, the 200 series was just not as reliable. It is still a very good vehicle, but the 5.7 liter V8 that went into that truck is just not as robust. It has some factory grenades, they're called, stuff that's going to break and be costly down the line. It can do good mileage before that stuff happens, and once you get that stuff fixed, it's not going to be a problem. But to really bulletproof a 5.7 liter Toyota motor, real money has to be put in. And that's not true of the 4.7 liter V8 that's in the 100 series. Meanwhile, if you go too early in the Land Cruiser realm, an 80 series or a 60 series Land Cruiser, you're starting to leave behind the luxury component of this list. 80 series Land Cruisers were luxurious in their day, but when you drive them now, they're kind of rough. The ride quality is rough. They don't have a lot of luxury features. And obviously before that, even more the case. The 100 series is really the meaty, correct, good point of where it was luxurious and cool and reliable and robust and obviously cheap to own all in one. And I really think that the 100 series Land Cruiser and Lexus LX are probably the best. The reason that I do not say that they are better than the Lexus GX, which is why I called that the final boss, is because the very newest 100 series Land Cruiser is a 2007 model and it's still a 20-year-old car. The Lexus GX it may still be reliable even if in its newest form, and was certainly reliable up until it switched to its newest form, which was only like 2 years ago. So you can get a 2-year-old GX and probably drive it for 25 years, no problem. I would be less certain that that's going to be the case in a 2007 or older 100 series Land Cruiser. They are very reliable, but at some point age starts to become a reality, and the GX just has the Land Cruiser beat in that area. But that car certainly belongs on this list. It is still certainly cool to pull up anywhere in a Toyota Land Cruiser, which still has this rep, especially an old school one, of being the ultimate SUV, and they are certainly reliable, good cars to own. There you go. Those are the 5. I kind of tossed in the Navigator, but like those are the 5. This list was hard to compile, and I really think it's exhaustive, meaning that everything that could be on it is on it. I don't think there are any other cars that really qualify. The Model X, the Tesla Model X maybe could be. We see them sometimes with big miles, and I've heard of limo companies using them for crazy long distances that sometimes they pull 200,000-300,000 miles, but I'm just a little skeptical of the ancillary stuff, the electronics, the door handles, the screen in the center. But Model X would probably be my alternate on this list if I had to pick one. And there are certainly some trims of other Mercedes-Benzes, GLs, and X5s with certain powertrains from certain years. Honestly, the second generation Volkswagen Touareg is actually a pretty reliable used electricity. Not the first generation, my God, but the second generation. But generally, this is your list. Used, cool, cheap to own luxury SUVs. That's it.